Don't Be Alone with Jake Hogan is brought to you by Prime Video, who presents Gen V from the world of The Boys. Season 2 follows the students at Godolphin University as a civil war is brewing between humans and soups. RogerEbert.com calls it sharper and sleeker, and IndieWire says it's impressive, entertaining, and ambitious. Gen V is awards eligible in Best Comedy Series and available at ConsiderAmazon.com.
Hi, I'm Larry Charles. Don't Be Alone with Jake Hogan is this show, and I'm here to talk to Jake Hogan, and neither of us are going to be alone through the entire show.
Don't be alone with Jake Hogan.
Hi, Hogan Nation. It's me, Jake Hogan, and you're listening to Don't Be Alone with Jake Hogan. I am so thrilled you're here. We have a great show for you today. Larry Charles, the great writer, director, is here. He just wrote a book about his life called Comedy Samurai, and it's amazing. We'll be talking about it. But before we get to him, I'd like to encourage you to subscribe to this show. You could also share the show with a friend. Wouldn't be bad. You could review the show. Don't hate that. You could email me at dbawjk@gmail.com and talk to me about what you think of the show. Your comments, your criticisms, your compliments, your suggestions are all needed, especially your viewer mail. I need your mail questions to continue the show. I also have this dumb new Substack thing that I'm making every week. So it's got special material, some written material, some video material, and we're going to get more and more into the bonus aspects of Don't Be Alone with Jake Hogan. Things never before seen will be on my Substack. So go to Jake Hogan. Is it Substack? Jake Hogan at Substack or Jake Hogan Substack. I'm not sure the address, but you people are smart. You can figure it out. Today, we have a great show. Larry Charles is here. Larry is a writer. He's a director, and when you read his book Comedy Samurai, you realize he's at heart an artist. He's got something to say, and he wants to say it, and he's willing to go to great extremes to get it done. He put his life in danger. He has risked his personal safety, finances, other things to get it done. The remarkable thing about him is he has a tenacity and a spirit that's pretty remarkable. His book, Comedy Samurai, is very, very, very revealing. Very open about affairs, about drug use, about things he's done wrong in the world, and very open about things other people have done wrong to him, especially people who he was working with creatively who didn't do right by him. Everything's at risk all the time. It's never an easy road. So you got to fight for what you believe in, and he is a guy who has been fighting for what he believes in his whole life. It's going to be an interesting discussion, I promise you this, with a very interesting guy. We'll be right back with Larry Charles right after this.
Don't be alone with Jake Hogan.
Larry, it's so great to have you here.
Thank you, man.
This is fantastic.
Thank you for asking me.
I read your book, and I don't know what I was expecting, but I kind of wasn't expecting that.
Right.
And I thought it was great. I really thought you really went down, as clearly and as completely and as honestly as you could, the events of certain things.
Yes.
And when things went haywire, when things went well,
yes.
And so, I mean, my audience probably knows, but just so you've been a part of some of the biggest comedic things on the face of the last 20 years, including SEINFELD, including BORAT, and Curb Your Enthusiasm. I mean, all these things are amazing and fantastic, and you've been a big part of it. But it's, like you're generally speaking a face behind the screen, so people don't know. And right. I didn't know when I read your book how much directing meant to you.
Right.
And I assume still does.
Yes, it does.
Why? I love directing too, by the way.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things. But why directing as the thing more than perhaps writing?
Well, I love writing. I do. And I do a lot of writing. I write every day, or as many days in a row as I possibly can. Every now and then there's a distraction. But I do love writing. I loved writing the book. Mm-hmm. I've been writing screenplays all throughout. They just don't get produced.
Right.
And I'm very frustrated by the commercial applications of my writing. They don't go. The book got published, which was lucky.
Right.
But getting a screenplay produced, I have found to be really, really difficult. I'm not a big fan of the writer's room. Mm-hmm. On SEINFELD, we really didn't have that.
Right.
And although I've done it, a few times over the years and worked on Mad About You, which was a writer's room kind of environment, I didn't really enjoy that kind of writing. I like solitary, in a room by myself kind of writing, and I do enjoy that. But the intensity and the action of directing is something that appeals to a part of me that is hard to scratch that itch any other way.
Right. Reading, again, I'm going to say the word reading your book a lot. I
like reading too, by the way.
But it felt like, your aspirations, artistic aspirations, not just I want to have something to do, not just I want to have something to do and I want it to be successful, but I want to have something to say. Right. And I'm willing to risk a certain amount of safety or to do it.
Most certainly.
So,
yes.
Where do you think that comes from? Because I got into show business to be funny.
Right. I don't know that I did. My father was the comedian in the family, and he was a failed comedian, and he was very obsessed with stardom and the glitz and the glamour. But he would take me on. He was friends. He'd gone to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts after World War II on the GI Bill. And a lot of those guys that he grew up with in that environment didn't wind up becoming actors, but stayed in show business, unlike him. And they became like production managers or lighting directors or whatever they did. And we would go visit them on shows. Like the Kraft Music Hall was right down the street from where I lived in Brooklyn. Which I'm sure your dad wrote for,
He may have. I know the Kraft Music Hall. My dad worked for The Tonight Show, and some other things in New York. But yeah, that era.
And with the Ed Sullivan Show, he was friends with the production manager of the Ed Sullivan Show. Right. So I would see the rehearsals, and I found what went into making a show fascinating. Right. More so in some ways than what you saw on the screen. The fact that there was all this stuff going on outside of what you saw on the screen was just really like a magical discovery to me. Right. So I think there was something about that really appealed to me, that was in the back of my mind. How do you get to do that? This is before film schools and things like that.
I first stepping on a soundstage, I thought, this is pretty cool. Yeah, I didn't care about the proscenium, what you saw in the proscenium, but what you saw behind it was also pretty cool.
Fascinating.
But it didn't inspire me to sort of be an avant-garde artist.
Right. Well, here's another thing. I say it's a confluence of events because I grew up in New York in the 60s and 70s, where I could go take a train from Brooklyn into Manhattan, go to these little underground movie theaters and these revival theaters. Right. And so while I was into show business really heavily because of my dad, I also got turned on to like Jean-Luc Godard and Fellini and Andy Warhol and all these avant-garde experimental filmmakers. And that really excited me also. You could do this with movies. It didn't even occur to me. Right. And then suddenly that became a part of my reality also. So there was a number of things that were kind of like influencing me at the same time. And I like the idea of pushing the limits. I remember going to see Pink Flamingos the first time, and these things kind of changed my life in a way. It's like, wow, this is a very different kind of movie than a George Stevens Greatest Story Ever Told type of movie. And I grew up around a bunch of guys who were like gamblers and risk takers in very self-destructive ways in some case. And that was also part of my personality as well.
And you grew up around the stand-up comedy circuit and those guys too.
Yes,
those guys are also risk takers.
Yes, exactly. There was Andy Kaufman was right in the middle of all that too. Yeah.
So it's an interesting confluence of all this events. But but the goal, how much of the goal when you first were beginning was, I got to be funny?
Something, I don't know that I knew that I had read that Woody Allen had sold jokes to comedians. Right. And that was a way to start. He was from Brooklyn. We had the same birthday, so he was a very important person to me. And when I saw Take the Money and Run and Bananas, I was like, wow, I would love to do something like that. Right. How do you get there? And he, by the idea of writing jokes for comedians was like something, well, maybe I could do that. Right. That seemed like a place. I was funny enough. I was a pretty good writer. I thought, wow, I could just write jokes maybe, and I could sell the jokes.
Right.
And when I came out here, I actually literally would go to the Comedy Store, stand in front of the Comedy Store with handwritten jokes. I didn't even have a typewriter. And when I saw a comedian I recognized, I'd go literally, how do you want to buy a joke? And that's how I got started.
How often did they want to check out your weird scrawled notes?
Enough.
Yeah?
Enough that I started to make a little bit of money. Not a lot of money, not enough to live on. I was still parking cars.
Right.
But getting that feedback, that positive feedback, was very, very encouraging. And then one of those guys, eventually, a guy that I met in Venice, actually, not at the Comedy Store, Darrow Igus, got cast on Fridays.
Okay.
And he recommended me as a writer on Fridays.
Right.
And so it was like a bunch of lucky, incidents.
Fridays, from my seat at home, was an interesting thing to watch, almost like in a train wrecky kind of way, like
like that quality.
Yeah, had that thing like it was. Yeah. I knew what they were trying to do because Saturday Night Live was also on, and then I'd recognize some of the people on Fridays I'd known from before. And it's like, okay, there's funny people trying to get together, and it was all about the chemistry, whether or not it's going to jive or not, whether it's going to work or not. In comparison to Saturday Night Live, it seemed to be it wasn't working all that well.
It was I would say there was a lot of things against it.
Yeah.
There was a lot of odds against it for a variety of reasons. And I don't say variety, no pun intended.
Right.
But ABC didn't own Fridays the way NBC owned Saturday Night Live. That was one thing right there. Saturday Night Live was kind of divinely inspired in a way when it came along. It was a very organic outgrowth of what was going on in the culture. The ABC wanted to cash in on that, so they decided to create this show. But for the writers, we were all like a radical bunch of writers who could have worked on Saturday Night Live, but we were out here, and they said to us, for instance, think of a title for this show, that'll kind of set us apart. And we all went off, I talk about it in the book, we all went off and came up with these crazy titles, more Monty Python-esque than anything, sometimes just symbols, not even words, and eventually we brought it back to the executives, to the producers, and when we got there, the binders, the jackets, everything already said Fridays. It was already decided.
Sure.
And that was, in a way, that radicalized us even more. But you're right, there was not an organic, the actors and writers were not like all like in one group moving forward. There were different motivations on everybody's kind of agenda.
Right. And the network said, basically, we're going to make our own comedy version of the thing that's going on over there.
Yes.
And you're already behind the 8 ball when that's happening. Because you're not going to make that. It's very rare that the second version becomes the better version.
Right. Well, we got lucky for a moment in time because Saturday Night Live had one of its weakest casts, one of its weakest couple of seasons, while we were sort of ascending.
Yeah.
And so for a minute there, we actually gathered that audience and they were sort of turning to us.
Right.
Plus we had really cool music on occasionally.
Right. I watched. I'm sitting at home. What am I going to do? I'm going to watch everything.
Right, exactly.
I'm going to anything that's on. I'm going to watch that. I'm going to watch that live. I'm going to watch commercials. I'm going to watch Hogan's
They could all coexist.
Right.
They could have coexisted. But at a certain point, it was too much for ABC. They were not invested in it.
Right.
They wanted to own it. They wanted the profits. The producers owned the show. And so when the Iranian hostage crisis came along, if you could believe it, they decided to come up with a show called Nightline.
Right.
And that they owned, and they pushed us back later into the schedule. Right. And from there, the ratings started to dissipate.
In your book, you talk about that. Then you talk about, working on, I guess was Arsenio next? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, about 7 years later.
Right. You also talk about, you talk to Arsenio saying, I think we can enhance what you do in a better way.
Yes.
By addressing some very interesting social issues and things in a way like you were trying to lift up the show to sort of be something better than it was.
Right. Well, I would have to find some justification in my own mind for making it work. And I thought, well, if I could do these Richard Pryor-like monologues for Arsenio, that would be really cool. That would be okay then. And this was before the show really took off also. And he was very open to it. A lot of people don't have a clear vision of Arsenio, but he was actually a very cool guy, and he really wanted to do that. And at that point, the show started to get popular, and with the popularity came a lot of hate.
Right.
He started to getting so much hate, pre-internet hate.
Of course. Yeah.
So it was like letters, hate letters, violent, sexually violent hate mail he would get, and he had to back down. We used to have metal screeners at the entrance for the audience because they were bringing weapons in, you know. So he had to back down for his own safety and take a much safer route. And the show, of course, exploded.
Right, and what he was doing, the other back down version, was very popular.
Was very popular.
Yeah. So it's like you can't be, you know, you can't blame the guy for saying, well, the thing that you're doing that's really popular, you should stop doing it.
Well, it's hard to think now, like this is 30 years back or however long it is, that just being a black star on TV was controversial.
Yeah.
Just that.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, exactly. So he had to really deal with all that stuff. Although at the same time, part of his radical approach was he was having bands on and groups on and music on that Jay Leno or anybody else would never have on in a million years. And that changed the landscape also.
What intrigues me, though, is my vision of you as a guy who sort of has artistic aspirations, trying to sort of make it in the world of, you know, talk shows or what have you. And I grew up in Hollywood. I know the landscape. Yeah. The landscape isn't like, oh, we are going to embrace your artistry. We're here to embrace your artistry. The landscape is, we want to make money. Right. So help us make money or get out.
Yeah. And here's your deadline every day. And you know, from the talk shows, like that is a hard deadline. You have to come up with pages of jokes per day. Right. We'd all get the newspapers at that time. You know, you'd just be reading through the newspapers in desperation, looking for subject matter, you know. Yes, I held on to my aspirations, but I also thought, wow, I don't know where I'm going. I was lost. Right. I was very lost at that time. And I only lasted at Arsenio for a season, half of which I didn't even get a joke on the air. Right. So, and I got fired. But it was only because I got fired, and then Keenan Ivory Wayans stood me up for a meeting in Living Color that it happened that Larry called me and said, hey, who was also struggling at that time, I'm doing this show. You want to work on the show? We'll do 13 weeks. You'll make a little bit of money. And I was like, yeah, of course. And that was Seinfeld.
Don't Be Alone with Jake Hogan is brought to you by Prime Video, who presents the new limited series The Girlfriend, starring Robin Wright and Olivia Cooke. Laura has it all: a glittering career, a loving husband, and her prized son Daniel. But her perfect life unravels when Daniel brings home Cherry, a girlfriend who changes everything. Laura's convinced Cherry is hiding something. Is she a manipulative social climber? Or is Laura just paranoid? The truth is a matter of perspective in this juicy psychological thriller. The Guardian gives it 4 stars and raves, if you only watch one show, make it The Girlfriend. The Standard gives it 4 stars and calls it television at its most addictive, sexy, dramatic, and dripping in excess. Collider says Robin Wright and Olivia Cooke have sizzling chemistry and fully lean into the intensity of their characters. The Girlfriend is awards eligible in all limited series categories and available for Guild members at consideramazon.com and is streaming now on Prime Video. Watch it.
Don't be alone with Jake Hogan.
Reading the book also made me think, and sort of I don't know if it's obstinance or stubbornness, or Larry is a stubborn guy. Yes. So I worked with him. I wouldn't work with him is wrong. I was a runner on It's Gary Shandling's show when he was there for an episode of writing it, and he was furious, like constantly. He would write and he'd want his way, and if he didn't get his way, he'd be furious and want to storm off and got out.
No compromise.
It's Gary Shandling's show. It's literally Gary's show, and so Gary's going to do it his way because it's his show. But he had no patience for it at all. Yeah. And it seemed like the confluence of that attitude with you was either going to be very explosive, like you're going to have 2 separate things, or it's going to, as it did, it worked really well. So what do you think made you sort of with your own vision and expertise, and him with his own sort of own vision, blend so well?
Well, he was a writer and an actor on Fridays. Right. So, and he was older than me, and we were from the same neighborhood. And so I immediately gravitated to him, and he immediately became like what I call in the book an inadvertent mentor. And he really showed me how to navigate this business through his lack of compromise.
Right.
And I learned about integrity, I learned about authenticity, and I learned really how to be a man. I was a kid when I worked on Fridays, and he was already a man. And I saw how he dealt with these compromises and these challenges, and I was learning from him.
Right.
So he was somebody that I deferred to. As obstinate as I might have been, he was somebody who I respected so deeply that I deferred to him when it came to these kind of matters.
Now, I, of course, think Larry's a genius and that his work is fantastic. I also think at least at that time, he seemed a bit like a lunatic. Like he really did seem like he's not addressing the world as it is.
Right.
He's addressing the world as he wishes it was.
Well, if you take Seinfeld out of the equation, you'd be totally right.
Yeah.
Because without Seinfeld, that's all he would have been.
Right.
He would have been like a very talented, a nut. You know, and he probably would have struggled his entire life without that having happened.
The uniqueness of that show and that vision could probably only come from somebody with that stubbornness.
Yes.
And that way, and the reason it explodes is everybody's seeing something they hadn't seen before.
Yes.
And say, that's amazing.
And they
funny.
stuck with it because they had nothing else. NBC didn't have something better to put on the air. It was a pretty cheap show. It was reaching a demographic that had not been tapped into before. There was a lot of outside, factors that came along that allowed Seinfeld to exist long enough until the audience really found it en masse.
And then when you joined the show, you felt like you created your own kind of niche on that show.
Right.
So what was your niche on that?
Well, I was still looking to express myself, even within the confines of Seinfeld. And Jerry and George were always well taken care of by Jerry and Larry. And Kramer, although Kramer was a real person and a friend of Larry's and his next door neighbor in real life, he was very untapped on the show. He was Michael Richards, who I knew from Fridays. I knew his ferocious sense of humor. And I also knew that this was a character that was coming in right now. He was just playing the usual traditional neighbor who would come into the sitcom, do his scene, mess things up a little bit, and then leave. And I thought this guy could be much more than that. He has much more potential, both the real Kramer and the Michael Richards version of it. And I wrote an episode that really brought him out of the apartment and gave him a major story. And that worked. Yeah. And everybody loved that and they gravitated to that. And it really kind of showcased Michael's capabilities.
Right. Did you feel it showcased your capabilities?
Well, right. I think so too. Yeah, exactly. It did. It worked.
So at that point in the Seinfeld era, you still held your dreams of wanting to be a director.
Yeah.
But you didn't really, there was no place to do that. You were waiting for your time?
First of all, I was from Brooklyn. I was from, kind of a lower working class kind of area. The idea of me saying, even just saying it, if I had said it out loud in Brooklyn, I would have gotten my ass kicked.
Right.
You know what I mean? I could not.
Here's your directing.
Yeah. I could not utter it out loud. It was a secret dream because I was too embarrassed to go, well, actually, I really like to direct. I mean, it just sounds like an asshole.
You're the only person in Hollywood who is too embarrassed to say that.
Every
other person
I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And there was a time on Seinfeld, in fact, when they were thinking about bringing in other directors, and they auditioned a number of people, David Steinberg and a few other people, and it didn't work out. And I thought to myself at that time, should I say something? No, I'm not going to say something. That's ridiculous. Who am I to even suggest that I should direct? I've never directed anything. So I kept it to myself, kept going, figured, okay, maybe I won't be a director. Maybe I'll be a showrunner.
Right.
Because a showrunner has a lot of power. The showrunner is the auteur of the show to a large degree.
In television, a showrunner is the director.
Yes, exactly. So I went to Mad About You. I left Seinfeld, went to Mad About You, and there I was the showrunner.
Right.
And I got a lot of satisfaction, but I still had this desire to direct. And there were 4 really cool directors at Mad About You, each of whom taught me kind of a lesson about directing. So I got very lucky to sort of have that film school while I was working.
Do you judge the success of your work by the reception from others, either the audience numbers or just by, in general, accolades from people around you, or is it something interior?
Well, there's definitely an interior aspect to it. I mean, if I feel good about it, I feel like I did something, I accomplished something, I accomplished what I set out to accomplish. That's good. But I am always shocked by both the success of things and the failure of things.
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot from the failure of things, you know? So failure, I realize, is a very important component. We can't get through our lives in this environment without some failure, and you better embrace it in some way, or you're going to be very bitter very quickly.
You seemed in the book a little naive, and still to this day a little
maybe
naive.
so.
The particular example was the Robert Redford thing,
Yes.
where you had a movie and it was in trouble, and you read it and you said, okay, here's my fix.
Yes.
And I'm going to go do this fix. And you talked to Redford and said, what do you think of this? And Redford said, yeah, I like it. Go do it.
Yeah.
And then you did it, and you got notes back. This stinks, or whatever he said.
Yeah.
But and you seemed shocked in the book, like, but he approved it.
Yeah.
As if that's not every day in Hollywood. Somebody approves it and then says it stinks.
I know. I think I'll never get used to that, actually, you know, which is bad.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is the way I am. I mean, I was like shocked. I was shocked that he turned on me like that. I mean, I did not see that coming. He seemed so excited by our relationship, first of all, and then by the idea of what I wanted to do with the script. And he backed me all the way until I gave him the script.
Right, but then you got back something that's equivalent of, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah.
And it's like,
what were you thinking, Larry? That's what he said to me.
What were I thinking? I was thinking the thing I said I'd tell you.
Right.
But
yeah.
that reaction, that sort of whatever happened between the time you turned it in and the time he read it and his people read it, and there was a conversation and somebody else had made him a different pitch and he decided to go another way, then you get the phone call, this stinks, which is basically saying, we're not doing this.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Well, I did get some Schadenfreude satisfaction out of the fact that the version that he wound up doing was not very good.
Right.
So he would have been better off doing what I was suggesting. And I'm convinced of that, you know, but what can you do?
Right. The two best outcomes when you're fired from a show or something like that is the show disastrously blows collapses under them. Like, aha, they did it without me, which you could have easily done with us. It didn't matter, but it feels good. And then the other way is you did something and you still own a piece of it and it's gigantic.
Right.
And then at least you're getting money from it.
Right, which didn't happen to me either.
Yeah, but those are only two good outcomes.
Those are two good outcomes. You're right.
But well, I mean, let's talk about a little bit about Borat. And I had seen Ali G. You know, I was very excited about a new, the Borat a movie, Sacha Baron Cohen movie. I think he was more well known in Hollywood than he was in other places. And it was very exciting. You seem to have really strong ideas about how to make something like that work, how to make it come about in a way that, and I know he had his own people and had been doing a TV show with this, but what you wanted a real truth behind what he's doing.
Yes.
And I don't even understand how you did it, where you set up a situation and just did it a bunch of times until you got stuff you like.
Well, I think one of the keys to the success of Borat that kept it from being just another series of sketches, really, or little episodes, which were all funny. But I think the key was that he was a real person in the world and that he had an emotional through line. And so that was something that I really felt I brought to the show that wasn't there originally. Todd Phillips was the original director, and he's a great director. And the scenes they shot a few scenes. They were really, really funny. But Todd was in the movie. He was almost really the star of the movie.
Right.
And so we had to remove him. And then the idea was, Borat is the star of the movie. And we gave him a sidekick that he could talk to. And then he had to have like an emotional sort of roller coaster ride. And doing that engaged you in a way that most sketch type movies would not do. The best Saturday Night Live movies had that as well.
Right.
They really were able to transcend the sketch origins of the movie. And that way he hits bottom. When he hits bottom, you're feeling for Borat. You're not going, what's the next bit going to be? And you could be patient and have the commitment.
Did you go in with an outline of that journey? of getting to hitting bottom? And did you know what that was going to be, or did you feel it out as you went?
Well, there's both. I pitched to them this idea of much more of a through line emotionally for him, and they were very responsive to that, Sasha particularly. But then as you're going along, you're getting scenes that really help that, and you're getting scenes that don't quite work for that, and you're sort of like paring away some of the stuff that doesn't really feed that idea, you know. And then you go into editing, you know, I was just reading, like Jean-Luc Godard said, there's 5 movies. When you make a movie, it's 5 movies. There's the casting, there's the writing, there's the shooting, there's the editing, and then there's the releasing of the movie. So this movie was really different with each iteration of it.
Yeah. And you say something in the book which I think is absolutely true, that Borat is the most successful one of those things because he has an innocence.
Yes.
And it's 100% true. I'm on Borat's side.
Yes. No matter what he does.
No matter what he, as hugely anti-Semitic or insane or
he's a rapist. He's
terrible to women. He's terrible to everybody. But I'm on his side because we explore that this is kind of where he's from, not who he is.
He's naive.
Yes.
He's naive, and he's forgiven. And it showed the tolerance and the patience of America towards him. And that really was helpful because it allowed him to go much further with the scenes that he might have been allowed to.
Right.
On Bruno, it was just the opposite. Bruno, and we did the first test scenes on Bruno right out here, and people were immediately hateful. People were immediately intolerant, and they felt comfortable getting physical with him right off the bat, and he couldn't get away with as much. Even though the movie is great and radical in its own way, people did not love Bruno.
No, Bruno's snotty.
Yeah.
I mean, he's kind of a jerk.
And he had only selfish desires, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it definitely made a difference. It's interesting. And I also understand that it's a format that couldn't continue because people would recognize him.
Yeah, although they didn't recognize him with Bruno. It was amazing.
Yeah.
We thought, well, that'll be the thing that stops that movie from going forward. And that's why we took him out on Melrose here, because the offices were right down the street. And we just put a crappy CVS wig on him, you know, and a little makeup and some clothes. And he walked down the street and nobody recognized him on Melrose, of all places. Right. So we thought, well, maybe we can get away with this, you know?
Yeah, I mean, he's hard to miss. He's very tall.
Very tall, especially with the platform shoes.
Sure. I'm like you in that I'll do what it takes to make it. If I see that there's something that I really want to get done, that's usually because it's funny, not because I have artistic intentions, but because I just want to make people laugh and I think it's good. And I do think part of what's good and what's funny is having something to say.
Yes.
I do agree that it's funny for funny's sake's not the best.
Right.
The best is having something to say. But I will suffer and I will not sleep and I will deprive myself of food and anything to make that work because that's ingrained in me the way I think it's very much ingrained in you.
Yes.
But then I wonder when I'm reading your books, like, is that a good quality? Like, maybe that's dumb. Like, you've risked a lot. You have family. You have other things going on. And the reward for risk ratio may not be worth. Do you feel it was worth it? All those things, all those risks that you described?
I question it all. I'm constantly questioning it all. When I did that show on Netflix, Larry Charles' Dangerous World of Comedy, you know, I was going to Somalia and Iraq to interview comedians there. And I don't think I realized the impact it had on my family. Actually, a lot of the things that I've done have had a tremendous traumatic impact on my family. And I think I really haven't been that fair to them about that kind of stuff. And I do have, you know, I've had this discussion with my wife recently about regrets. Mm-hmm. I mean, unlike Frank Sinatra, I have a lot of regrets, you know, and as Brad Garrett was saying to me the other day, don't worry, Frank Sinatra had plenty of regrets also.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
You know, and it's like that is kind of the life we've chosen in a way.
Early on, through Gavin or I was introduced to you. You seem cool. You're part of like George Meyer and Maria Semple, and you're part of this group. And you always seemed definitely a little enigmatic, but a little scary.
Right.
A little scary. Right. And it wasn't just your beard or your look, but just you had a vibe about you. And I have a pretty big radar because I come from like a very tumultuous mother who just like, to survive, you have to know what's going on around you.
Read everybody.
Read everybody a little bit. It's like you had a little bit of vibe. Like, I don't know about this guy. I was worried, and when I read the book, I go, oh, I was justified with some of this stuff because you know, there's a certain amount of behavior that's inappropriate and other stuff that's sort of not I'm not a moral guy. I just don't do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm not,
Yeah.
I don't judge people, but it's just not into that. And I wouldn't get along. So I vibed you in a certain way that I think was
Pretty accurately.
partially right. I don't think it's full completely.
Well, I think I've evolved also. I mean, I think I was a very out of control person for a lot of years, and I really didn't know who I was, didn't know what I wanted, was very hungry, was lashing out in all kinds of directions, had an uncontrollable temper, did a really, I crossed a lot of lines.
Of course. But in the heart of, and by the way, I've made horrible mistakes in my life too, and it's also in service of wanting to feel loved, wanting to feel clean, wanting to feel some measure of happiness in a world where you're not feeling happy, all this kind of angst and desire, and you're trying to put out a fire and maybe doing it in the wrong ways. But so I have an incredible amount of empathy and sympathy and connection to that as well.
It's a comedy writer's dilemma to some degree.
So, but I think I do.
The irony.
Yes, it's true.
But also there was a lot of fear.
Yeah.
I was afraid. Did I belong here? How do I fit in here? What do I do? You know, I was very lost in a lot of ways. And and in a way, sunglasses, beard, long hair was a mask.
Yeah.
To keep people sort of at arm's length.
A wall. Yeah.
And I'm more willing to take the glasses off and connect now.
Right.
And sort of I've learned how to be okay with all that.
Because why? Why? I
because it's exhausting to have a persona.
Right.
You know, it's like I'm past all that. You know, I don't need. I would carry around worry beads and I would wear pajamas and you know, it was like it was all surface stuff.
Right.
You know?
And there's a part in the book where you say like, oh yeah, I guess wearing pajamas is somehow disconcerting.
Yeah.
Like you didn't realize that, or at least you didn't think you realized that.
Well, when I was working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week on Mad About You, it was a practical choice.
Right.
But then once I wasn't doing that, and I still was wearing the pajamas, and I'd walk into a restaurant, I go, wait a minute, what am I doing? You know, it's like I snapped out of the trance.
Right.
You know, and that was a kind of an epiphany for me.
Right. You know, your book has a happy ending in that you find love.
I'm alive.
And you're alive.
Yeah.
You got through a lot of this stuff. I mean, yeah, the very ending was very like that you're going through this heart attack or whatever. I'm not even sure what that was.
I'm not myself, but I think it was a heart attack.
Yeah.
But it was not. It was like a AFib thing.
Right.
You know?
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're here and you seem to be aware of responsibilities to make sure that people around you who you love feel loved and are taken care of. Like you're more aware of all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So it really, you know, if you're looking for an entertaining story about somebody who struggles and gets to the end to me isn't your artistic vision. It's coming to a life that accepts love and has love and you care about that. That's so much more important.
Yes, very much so.
Plus the movies will disappear at some point. You know, it's like,
exactly. Everything disappears.
Right.
Everything is temporary. So all you could do is be in that moment and love those around you and forgive and not carry that burden of hate with you. You know, it's very hard. I mean, I still have anger, you know, but my anger is now directed more about the world. You know?
I see that.
And that is something that does bother me still. But I mean, I think that's a good focus for my anger, to look at the world and go, wow, this is so unfair. There's so many people suffering. Right. What can I do about that? You know, and so I've tried to apply it to that.
I'm on your feed. Like I see you give on TikTok and in Instagram or wherever there's you little screeds about, well, not even little screeds, long diatribes about where you're at and what's going on and who you think, you know, how politicians and the corrupt world around us is taking advantage of everybody else. Yeah. And, you know, to my way of thinking, well said, all great.
Thank you.
It's what's interesting though is like it's not funny. It's not what I expect from you. Yeah. And it's not, and you wouldn't be the source. Right. You wouldn't be the immediate source I would go to for that kind of political commentary.
Yeah, I don't know what else to do. And it's like, I would like to be funnier in those situations, but I write them and that's how they come out. And I want it to be as immediate as possible. So I don't go back and kind of punch them up. Right. You know what I mean? I just I let it go, you know, and because they are sort of like journalistic, because they're there and then they're gone the next day, you know. That's the way that writing happens to be coming out these days.
Do you find you're getting a lot of feedback about that? And
I get a lot of feedback, and a lot of people are angry that I'm not funnier in those situations. You know, It's like, aren't you the guy from Seinfeld? What are you doing? You know, they just realize that that's me.
But the satisfaction rate comes from getting people comment or people talk to you and say thank you for saying that?
Yes.
What do they say?
Yes, I get a lot of really. I mean, for all the hateful comments or the negative comments,
Right.
I get mostly overwhelmingly positive comments from people who are really happy that someone is voicing these opinions.
Don't be alone with Jake Hogan.
Back to Sasha for a second.
Yeah.
If you could give Sasha advice, entertainment-wise, acting-wise, what would be the next step for him to move forward?
He's a brilliant, one-of-a-kind comedian. He is in the tradition of a Peter Sellers.
Was also an unpleasant fellow.
A troublesome
Right,
personality,
right.
dysfunctional person. I would be recommending him. This is something I told him when we did The Dictator.
Mm-hmm.
You've got, and this is something I say to myself, and I say to anybody, trust your instincts. You have sharp instincts. You are constantly being diverted from your instincts and doing things that other people are telling you to do instead of doing what you think you should be doing. You should be doing the being there. You should be doing the strange
Right.
love. You should be doing those kind of parts that showcase your diversity, your characterizations, your one-of-a-kind comic sensibility.
Right. Do you think that he'll ever learn to share the stage?
Well, that's the problem. I think that part of the reason he's not able to do that, and again, that's fear maybe on his part and insecurity, but he was not generous enough on The Dictator to allow that to be this kind of strange, lovey and epic movie. And I thought that was a terrible mistake, even though I tried to keep moving him in that direction of this ensemble piece where he's clearly the star still. Like Strangelove is a great ensemble piece. Sterling Hayden, George C. Scott, all these great people. But Peter Sellers is in the center of that with all those parts. I tried to move him in that direction constantly,
Right.
but he wanted to even turn The Dictator, to me, what seemed into a one-man show.
Right.
And that's what I would be trying to tell him to relax about that. You're gonna like Jerry's brilliance in a way, like Jack Benny when we were kids, is somebody who was not afraid to not be the funniest person in the scene.
Yeah.
If the scene was funny, he came off as funny.
Of course.
And
of
that's
course.
how Jerry was, and that's how Jack Benny was.
That's the great secret of comedy.
Yes.
You get credit for
Yes.
being on screen with somebody when something funny is happening. It doesn't have to be you.
That's right. That's
and
right.
What are you watching or reading that you're loving that you think is funny or great or wonderful right now?
Oh my God. I started watching, I mean, comedy wise, I find it very hard to find things that are funny. I did stumble onto a show called The English Teacher.
Yeah.
Do you know that show?
On Hulu?
That made me laugh. So I was very happy about that. But not too much else makes me laugh. I mean, I watch mostly dramatic stuff, you know, like Mayor of Easttown. I just watched that. I'm late to it, I know.
Right.
But I thought it was really cool. And there's this new show of Mark Ruffalo done by the same people. That seems like a good show.
Yeah.
I do a lot of reading, but I don't read really comedy. I'm reading a great book called Service by this guy, John Tottingham, who's like a poet who works at a bookstore down on the East Side somewhere. And it's about a poet who works at a bookstore on the East Side. So, you know, it's a great, great book. And very kind of Bukowski-like in some ways. You know, and that's the kind of stuff that I'm gravitating to right now. I go through different periods. Like I was into a very science fiction period before that, and reading a lot of science fiction, Philip K. Dick and things like that. So I kind of, and that's what I mean. I like drawing on those kind of things to influence my work.
All right. So now you're writing every day. What are you looking forward to? What is on the agenda? What do you hope to accomplish? And if you do or don't, what else are you looking forward to?
I'm going to try to stay alive.
Okay.
That's the A right there. That's the foundation.
How's that going?
Well, so far so good.
Okay.
I mean, nothing else is going to happen if I don't stay alive. I want to continue working.
Right.
I have a couple of movies that look, have some traction. We know how it is that they could still fall apart, but hopefully those movies will happen.
Okay.
I'm writing another book. The original draft of the book that just came out, Comedy Samurai, was 1,000 pages and included my childhood up to the time I got the job on Fridays. That whole section of my life.
Right.
I'm reworking that to maybe put that out as another book. I'm working on yet another book. So I'm staying prolific. I'm staying, kind of fertile and creative.
In that book one that never came out, the first part of the book that never came out, that will be book two eventually.
Yes.
The childhood. Looking back and writing it and saying, this is where I come from. What did you learn from that?
I learned the both the positive and the negative impact of my parents. I think that my parents did the best they could. I think they loved me,
Sure.
But I think that my father had a lot of jealousy and pettiness and competition with me, and he couldn't really be encouraging of my dreams,
Right.
because they reminded him of the dreams deferred for himself. And I realized that in a way, that sort of fueled me. That sort of pushed me out into the world, was trying to accomplish what he hadn't accomplished.
One of the great stories in the book is that he wanted a picture with Jerry.
Yes.
And then there was a picture of him and Jerry and a picture of him and you and Jerry. And of course, he's your dad. And so like the Seinfeld show is your accomplishment.
Right.
And this is his father who could certainly put on his mantle a picture of his son and Jerry Seinfeld and him saying, look at what my son did.
Yes.
But he chose the picture of him and Jerry.
Correct.
And that says a lot.
That said a
about who
lot.
he is.
That
Yeah.
said a lot about who he was.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so he wanted
And that was kind of a culmination of what I'm talking about.
he wanted the glory.
Yeah.
And he didn't want you to be involved.
The first
in that
thing he
particular
said to me when I won an Emmy in '93, whatever it was, and he called me and said, "Well, you look fat."
Yeah.
That was
Right.
his first thing to
Right.
say to me. So, it's like he never really was quite. Now, maybe he was proud and couldn't express it. I don't know.
Right.
But he did not express it.
And your mom, though, was a big cheerleader, right?
She was a saint.
right.
Yeah.
So she compensated.
And of course, she was killed in a car accident.
Right.
My father lived to be in his 90s.
Right.
My mother was struck down
Right.
inadvertently, in a car accident.
But the cheerleading, remains in your head. In other
Absolutely.
words, all the love and encouragement that somebody pours into you doesn't go away when they go away.
And I miss her. I
course.
miss her.
Yeah.
I miss my dad too.
Yeah.
But and that's the thing. I've come to a place where I can miss my father also.
Right. What's the biggest mitigating factor that allows you to forgive your dad?
I think the place that I've had my brush with mortality. I've had failure in marriage. I've had failure in many things in my life, and I'm able to get inside his head better as a result of those things. Understand the pain and the frustration he must have been having. As a kid, it didn't make any sense to me.
Right. This is a separate question entirely, but
Yes.
also reading the book, and I wouldn't ask these questions of anybody else who didn't write a book this open and honest.
Yeah.
But since you did, and I read it and I enjoyed it, I'm going to ask you.
Sure.
To analyze your behavior for a lot of this stuff, it seems like you're a little bit of an action junkie.
Definitely.
Like the affairs and other things, there's action in that.
You're right.
There's
You're right.
so
and
like-
Borat and Larry Charles' Dangerous World of Comedy.
Right.
In my work, in my private life, I have sought action. Yeah,
Right.
like a compulsive gambler.
Right.
Yeah,
And
very
then-
much.
And then so
Very
it's
much.
the tumultuousness
Yeah.
that sort of, even though it punches you in the face sometimes, it's still
Yeah.
like action.
Yeah, I still say to my wife now, and I'm happily married. I love my wife.
Right.
Everything's really good. I want action.
How do you quench that thirst now?
Chasing these projects.
Okay.
Yeah, I try to channel it. Finally, I'm channeling all of that energy into my creativity.
Let's talk about the landscape, the entertainment landscape.
Yes.
So you're going to get movies made in a world where they're making way less movies, and the movies that they make sometimes come out on streaming and sometimes don't get released, and so how are you protecting these projects?
Well, part of it is I don't care anymore if I would prefer with certain of these projects that they got released in a movie theater. But overall, that's not a concern of mine anymore. I want to make it, I want it to exist.
Right.
And then wherever it's seen, it'll be seen on a phone, on a screen, wherever on TV. I'm okay with that.
Would you
first of
make
all.
it just on a phone and put it on YouTube?
Yes,
Okay.
part of my little experiments with the rants that I do is to try to just do something that's I have a YouTube channel.
Right.
And on the YouTube channel I've made a couple of shows and a couple of documentaries and things like that are just for the YouTube channel. And that's my kind of entering into that world because there's an audience there.
Yeah.
And so I'm ready to reach that audience that way. I'm okay with that. I don't need to have a billboard on, I've had it.
Right.
You know, I don't need to have the billboards. I don't need to have the big openings. That is kind of much less interesting to me now than making something cool and getting it directly to people. When I did Larry Charles' Dangerous World of Comedy, I met so many people in Liberia and places like that who were doing it on social media and reaching millions of people, getting around the usual state media or government media. And that really inspired me.
Right. Well, now we all get to do it the Liberian way.
Right, exactly, exactly. Ironically,
yes,
yeah.
we're down the street from Paramount Studios, but Liberia is a better releaser of your movies.
Yes, it's a better role model.
Have I grilled you enough about your life?
I think so, but I'm okay. I'm open. I'm an open book, as you know.
I know. How did your wife feel about the book?
I think she was pretty happy with it. You know, I think she was proud. So, and I talked about us in a very positive way. So I thought that was good.
How did your kids feel about it?
My kids are much more trepidatious about it.
Right.
And in fact, I was thinking they all started reading it like together, like a book club. And I haven't heard from them recently. So I have to check in and see how they're doing.
Do you think they knew most of the stuff in there, or do you think they'll be surprised by some of it?
I think they were worried about some of it. My oldest daughter, I tell a story about the police coming to our house, and she's always felt responsible for that incident, which she wasn't.
Right.
And she's like, Dad, are you going to put that in the book? And I'm like, yeah, it's a great story, you know.
Right.
And so I think they have some anxiety about it a little bit. So I think they knew a lot, and there's a lot that they probably didn't know as well.
Yeah. I guess there is a freedom that comes with, it's all out there now.
Yeah.
Right?
Right, exactly.
So you're walking now.
Yeah.
With a load off your chest. And
I lived with lots of secrets for a while in my life.
Right.
And it's a burden.
Yeah.
Tremendous stressful burden. And I don't have that now.
Right. It's part of the action, though.
It is part of the action. Well, building of new ones, right?
Exactly. All right. Well, it's a great book. If anybody has a chance to read it,
it
is, I don't know if everybody's going to have the same perspective I do as another comedy writer who was working at the same time and dealing with many of the same issues and many
people.
of the same people. So it was particularly enlightening to me, but I have friends who just read it. One of my son's friends last night, we were at dinner. I said, you were coming in. He said, oh, I just read that book. It's fantastic. He goes to Stanford. He's a Stanford kid. And they love it because they love, your work. And it's insightful to see how different artists art.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I really appreciate that. That's very nice of you to say. And thank him as well.
I will. Okay. Yeah. So Daniel Rashes. You're thanked by Larry Charles.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so this is the listener mail.
Now it's time for listener mail.
Dear Jay and guest, how do you define a great artist? Is it someone who takes a great risk and digs deep to reveal a truth that may only be relevant to one person? Or is it someone who is able to communicate an idea that is relevant to many people and carry it in a medium that's entertaining or interesting enough to capture the imagination of many?
Interesting. I just moderated a Q&A with an artist named Paul McCarthy. I don't know if you know who he is.
One of the Beatles, right? Fantastic. Yeah.
Something that happens to him all the time. Yeah. He is he's a very interesting visual artist. He does a lot of videos and things like this, very extreme stuff. And he said, and I thought this is really a cool definition, he said, art is what I enjoy and entertainment is what everybody else enjoys, and I think that is the difference. An artist is not as concerned with the audience. Entertainers are more concerned with the audience reactions. Right. So that is a distinction. Beyond that, it's really hard to define what an artist is.
Well, are you an artist or an entertainer?
Well, I think I actually fall in that kind of middle ground because I feel I want to be an artist, that I am an artist. I'm aspiring to art, but I want the audience to respond. Right. That is important to me. That part of me is a very important part of me as well.
I always thought that art was good art. Good art is when there's an idea that an artist wants to communicate, and he communicates it through a medium, whatever that medium is, and that the receiver gets something. Maybe not exactly that message, but something from that art. That telephone of idea to medium to response.
But it is a kind of a mystery why certain pieces of art or artists do reach a large audience and others don't. You know, if you look at Rothko or you look at the abstract expressionists, it's like, why is that popular? Why do people, what's the resonance for an audience over generations for something like that? It's kind of a mystery in a way, and maybe it should be a mystery.
I mean, we have to, as being in show business, part of it's just dumb luck, right?
Part of it's dumb luck.
You're one decision away from being an insurance salesman in Brooklyn.
Yes.
Like, I mean, honestly, so
luck is such a big factor in all of this. This could be the foundation for everything we've spoken about is luck.
Well,
I absolutely agree.
Somebody once said that you need two of three things to survive in art, in show business, which is luck, talent, and drive.
Right.
Any two,
yes,
you'll be good at. You'll get where you want to go.
Right. It's
just
true.
having one, not enough.
Yeah. Luck to me is like synchronicity is like it's an essential component.
Right. Yeah. Larry, this has been great.
Thank
you for
man.
being here. This is
pleasure.
Such a joy, and thank you for writing that book.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All the great movies and all the great TV shows.
I'll keep trying.
Okay, me too.
All right, good.
And thank you for being here. This is my audience. I talk to in the camera,
even
though they're not here. Hi. You know, when you get a chance to be connective and sit with somebody face to face, do it. Don't get off your computers, get off your phones. Just the whole point of this is to remind you, sit with somebody and meet somebody new, somebody old, but be connective. That would be great. And write me at dbawjk@gmail.com if you want to connect with me. And if you have something to say, Larry, I'll pass it on. And until next time, I'll see you.
Don't be alone.